that. Now I just need to get to the chat. Okay. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. I tried to do this through the scheduler and it did not work the way that it was advertised. So we're running just a minute behind, but that's okay. There's plenty of content to cover here, and hopefully you guys are as excited about this as I am. So I'm going to add one more thing to my stream real quick. Okay. Alright, so that's all set up. Let me close a couple windows and then we can go ahead and get started. So welcome guys, thank you for being so patient while I figured all that out. I just had a couple last minute snags. It was the only thing that I couldn't really test was whether or not the stream would work. And it seemed like the stream key that they had provided me, I guess, became invalid overnight. So, you know, there's not really anything I can do about that. But it's something I can be mindful of in the future. So, how's everybody doing tonight? That's probably the first thing I should address is that. See how everybody's doing. So, tonight I'm going to teach you guys... Wow, that does not... That's fine. Okay. We're going to learn basically some camera basics. The basics of the camera aren't something that you need to necessarily know in order to take a good photo. I want to get that out of the way straight off the bat. You don't have to know all the settings to take good pictures. It helps if you're looking to take a certain kind of photo, like if there's something that you want to replicate or there's something that you want to do. Understanding how the camera works will help if you want to do something like that. Otherwise, I mean, a lot of this will, you know, somebody should be able to take a little bit out of this. Oh, Chinese food. I miss Chinese food. I hope you're doing well, Andy. Thank you. The first things we're going to talk about are camera settings. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using my camera. It's tethered to my computer right now, so we're going to go ahead and turn that on. I've made sure the battery is all charged and everything, so we're going to just jump into here, and we're going to turn on remote shooting. So now, what we should have is a settings window. So you should be able to see all of my camera settings on screen right now. You can see every setting that I have on my computer, how I'm photographing it live. And we're going to use this to kind of go through the settings, and that way, even at a glance, you can kind of understand what these settings are, what they mean, what they do. At least that's the goal. So let me move the chat over here so I can see this. Dave, thank you, man. You did not have to do that. You already do too much. I appreciate you, man. You guys are amazing. So the first setting, the first thing I want to talk about is the settings. The settings are, there's 3 core settings to taking any picture with a professional camera, or in some cases with your phone, newer phones, and then there's apps that you can download that will unlock the settings for you to manually change them. Even if you have an old cell phone, you can still take good pictures. The only difference is going to be how tightly packed those pixels are going to be and how big you can make the picture. 9 times out of 10, these things are going to be posted to Facebook or to Instagram or something like that anyway. So they're going to get compressed. They're not going to look as good as if you just took them and uploaded them. So unless you have your own website where you can upload uncompressed photos or anything like that, what you're taking pictures on doesn't really matter. But these settings are really straightforward. The three core settings that you have to balance are your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture or your f-stop. Now, each one does something a little bit different. They all ultimately kind of affect the lightness and darkness of the photo, but they also change something else about the picture. And I'm going to try to demonstrate as much of that to you today as I can. No problem, Sorvan. We're actually just getting started. I was a little bit late because of some stuff, but we're all good. The first setting that I like to go into is the ISO. So let me highlight that right here for you guys. This is your ISO setting. This can range anywhere from, I think I've seen like up to like 50, but they're pretty low. What's going on, Z? How you doing, man? My camera's current lowest is 100. It is 100 ISO. This again is going to affect the lightness and darkness of your photos. The ISO setting is your camera's the sensor that's in the camera. It is how sensitive to light the sensor is. So what that means is if I'm taking a picture with just this one light on, and for the sake of getting started, we're going to start with just one light. If you have more lights, your ISO can be lower. If you have less lights, your ISO needs to be higher. Your trade-off here is going to be that the higher your ISO, it's creating like an artificial light, and you're going to have a lot of noise in your photos. Now, again, with compression and things like that, when you're uploading them online, it's not a huge deal. But if it's something like if you keep your galleries and you don't do a lot of editing or anything like that, not a big deal. If you just take pictures and post them straight online, it shouldn't be of too much consequence. But if it's something you like to catalog and hold on to, or you show off like the raw photos to people, maybe that's something that you would be concerned with. So let me go grab a piece of paper real quick. I'm going to try to teach this the way that I was taught it. Naturally, I don't think I have a marker anywhere. That'll work. Okay. So, we're going to call the topmost point of this triangle our ISO. We're going to do 100. And then on my camera, the highest setting for the ISO is 6400. Your numbers may vary depending on what you're using, what you're taking pictures with, whatever. So at 100, you're going to have a dark image, and on 6400, you're going to have a bright image. And on 100 ISO, you're going to have no noise. And on 6400, you're going to have a lot of noise. So, pretty straightforward. Sorry about the lighting, but I'll try and take a picture of this later and show it to you guys. So the ISO affects the amount of grain that's in your photo. It affects the quality of the photo. It affects the lightness of the photo. So I'm going to bump this up to 6400 maybe. We're going to see. And I'm going to turn... Oh, I got another thing to turn on. Let's see what that does. Alright, I've got an insanely fast shutter right now. And just let me fix this window. This is something that It occasionally, like, it tries to find the window, but it's not there. So there we go. So this is our first picture. Now, obviously, because there's one light, there's a lot of shadows going on, so we'll fix all that later. But let me blow this up just a little bit. You can see that it looks fine. I mean, newer cameras do a better job of getting rid of the noise in the picture. Not always the case. So this might not be immediately evident. But if I turn another light on, and I, take my lighting into consideration, and I position my model as such. Now this should be, that's actually not bad. We're gonna move some more lights in here. I've got a ton of lights set up. If I can get this in here. There we go. We got one over here. And we got another one over here. And let me lower this down so that we can see it. Okay, so now we have a ton of light on our subject. And we're going to bump our ISO down to 200. We're going to slow our shutter down. We're going to take the same picture. Now, this one is going to be a lot cleaner. This is going to show off the details a lot better. What's going on, McDio? How you doing, man? I cannot remember your real name, but I know I've met you in person, so I apologize. Welcome to Photography Class 2.0, where I don't teach the whole class in 10 minutes. The second picture looks a lot cleaner. Again, you're not going to be able to see this probably through the stream, just because of the way this is working. But the image quality is going to be a little bit higher. The next setting I want to talk about is shutter speed. So, I'm going to go back to our little triangle here. Let me turn some of these lights off so you can see what I'm doing. Shutter speed my lowest shutter speed is, I mean, it's pretty low. So we're going to go with, we'll just call it 1/4. I can go way lower than that, but that is like a whole nother thing. And then we can go all the way up to 1/4000th of a second. So now this is going to kind of work the opposite of how the ISO works. The faster your shutter speed, this setting affects how fast the shutter opens up and closes back down to take the picture. The faster it is, the less light gets in, which means the less time it has to capture what's in front of it. So if you have a very, very, very bright setting, this is going to be good for that. Another good thing about this is the shutter speed is going to affect motion blur. So as model photographers, this is probably the least important setting, unless you're going for like people that do light drawings will use incredibly high shutter speeds to capture all that light. You don't see a lot of that with model photography. So again, unless you're trying to do something like that, this is probably going to be your least important setting. So we're going to do, this is bright, because it stays open for a very long time at 1/4. But for 1/4000, it's going to be dark. And then we're going to have motion blur versus no blur. So there's that. This is one I can't really demonstrate, just because obviously, I mean, I could actually I can demonstrate this. So let's put this at 1/25. I'm gonna focus this, and I'm just gonna kind of like move my camera and snap the picture, and it's blurry. Okay. but if I turn my lights back on, this is, I guess I fibbed a little bit. If you, thank you, Jim. You, I appreciate the spirit of competition. Let's lower our f-stop a little bit. So now if I do the same thing and I move a little bit, it's dark because it's a little bit underexposed. If I bump my ISO to like 400, yeah, there you get a brighter image, far less blur. It's still a little blurred because I'm moving the camera, obviously, but you get the idea. So that's what your shutter speed is going to affect. What are you guys doing? Stop it. Thank you. The last setting that we're going to talk about, turn these off once more, is your f-stop. Your f-stop is going to affect, again, your lightness and darkness of your picture. Let's see, the higher your f-stop is, so the current lowest that my camera with this lens, your f-stop is usually affected by your lens. This can go down to an f5.6. So we're going to use that as our baseline. And the highest it can go, is 36. You guys are crazy. At f36, you're going to have a dark image. And at 5.6, you're going to have a light image. Now, what the f-stop does is it affects how far open the camera's aperture goes. So paired with the shutter speed, it's how fast it opens and closes, and then how much it opens and closes. The less it opens, the lighter the image can be, because it basically it's easier for that little bit of light to get in than it is for a lot of light to get in. But the lower your f-stop is, the more shallow your depth of field is going to be. So we're going to call this shallow and this wide. So depending on the kind of picture you're taking, you might want a shallow depth of field. Maybe you just want a couple of the details that you have to be in focus. And this is going to be hard to do on this model, just because it's a high grade. I am going to regret doing this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull down something larger just so I can demonstrate what I'm trying to show you guys here. And I'm actually going to turn my light up quite a bit. Oh. Okay. So this, we're going to shoot this first one at the lowest f-stop we can get. And I'm going to make my focus point here on the shoulder. Now maybe you can see it. It seems like, let me pull up the actual image so I can see it. Oh god, that actually affects everything. Let's not do that. Oh, I've messed everything up. There we go. Basically everything here is going to be in focus, and the farther away you get from that focus point, the more out of focus it becomes. another thing I can do to test this would be if you're taking a picture of more than one model. So, I don't know why I didn't just do that from the beginning, because it might be easier to demonstrate. If I grab this guy, and then I grab this guy, I have a shallow depth of field. I'm going to be able to take a picture of this, and that's a little overexposed. Let me fix that real quick. There we go. So you can see the GM, or I mean the gun cannon clearly in the front. The wound wart in the back is more out of focus. If I crank my f-stop really high, that's going to make that depth of field wider. Meaning that I need to adjust my settings a little bit. Meaning that they should both be in focus. So if you're taking a picture of a large model and you want everything to be there, you need to shoot on this might be too great of an example. But if I pull this in a little bit, it should give me something a little bit more like that. There we go. So it's more in focus. Both subjects are in focus no matter what I focus on. So if I focus on the wound wart, the gun cannon is slightly out of focus. It's very slight, but you can still see it. It's still pretty detailed. It's still there. And of course, he fell over. So once you understand the three settings, you understand the way the settings work, you can start to manipulate those to fine-tune your photography and figure out the kind of pictures you want to take. There is a fourth setting, but this one is far less important, and depending on how you shoot, it might matter even less. If you shoot raw images, you can pretty much shoot this however you want. If you don't shoot raw images, this matters a little bit more. I don't shoot raw just because the editing software I use doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't take RAWs very well. So I just shoot JPEGs. But that's going to be your white balance. Your white balance should be set to the kind of light that you're using. If you're not sure, set it to auto. It usually does a pretty good job. So now that we have this all straight, we know what our settings are, we know how to use them, we understand them. It's the next thing we need to talk about is lighting. Now the standard for lighting, especially with model photography, is typically 2 lights. They wouldn't be this far back, so I would basically swap these 2 lights for these 2 lights, and that would be my setup. I would have 2 lights pointed at my backdrop. And the reason for that is it just works. It's pretty simple. It's 2 lights. It eliminates any cross shadowing. It's pretty flat lighting. It works. There's no reason to do anything much more complicated than that if that's what works. You can add more or less lights if you want. If you only have 1 light available, you can put a piece of white paper here, and that will bounce the light the other way. So you'll have less light on this side, but it'll help balance it a little bit. But I do recommend, if you're going to be taking pictures, 2 light minimum. It'll help. Now, if you have room for more, I have 4 here. I'd like to get a 5th and like put it over top. But whatever you can make work, use it. I don't know how you could confuse those two. So we're going to turn all my lights on, and we're going to talk about backdrops. Backdrops, the most important thing about taking a picture is your light. That's it. If you light your photo well, no matter what you take a picture of it with, it should look fine if you've lit it properly. So the backgrounds, the camera, none of that matters as long as you have good light. Now, on backdrops, there's a ton of options available. If you're like Tim, he puts his cutting mat down and takes a picture on the cutting mat. Some people like that. Some people take pictures at their desk. It looks great. Now, my desk is a wreck, so that doesn't work for me. Sometimes I'll do it just because I'm lazy and I don't feel like cleaning everything up to take one picture, and then, I got to find all my stuff again next time I start working on things. But find a style that works for you. Now, when it comes to actual backdrops, there's a load of options. Tons of options available. One of the things I haven't tried yet, but I'd like to. I need to order some. Excuse me. I've seen a lot of this textured photography paper. It's got like wood grain on it, or it looks like slate, stuff like that. It's pretty inexpensive. You get a huge roll of it, and it should last you for a really long while. So I want to get my hands on that, and I'll probably do a video on it if I do get it. But one of my favorite photo options, for backdrops anyway, are these. These are these large, they're basically printed cardstock on foam. They are by a company called Replica Surfaces. There you go, you can see that. Replica Surfaces, it's printed on the back. And they come in a variety of colors, textures, things like that. These are really nice if I wanted to lay some stuff down. This is going to be a really awful picture, but I'm just trying to get the point across. And you want to do like a lay flat shot. I'm overexposed. Hold on. Boom. You square that up, put it on Instagram, maybe get rid of some of that glare. It's a done deal. They also sell these little clamps, and then you can clip the sides. And this is what I use for a lot of my pictures now, just because I spent the money. I want to make sure I get the use of it. But then you grab another one of these guys. You seat that in the sides here. And you've got an instant backdrop. Now, if you get two matching ones, it probably works the best. But if you want like mixed textures and stuff like that, you want like contrast between colors, this is a good way to do it. And there we have it. So this is really coming out underexposed. Let me try that one more time. Psych, I did it the wrong way. There. So it's a really cool option. You get a little bit of a lip down here. You can see kind of where they meet. Sometimes one of the things you can do is you can slide the bottom out and seat the backdrop in. But the big downfall here, this is a really cool option. These are expensive. I spent, it's like $75 per backdrop. I have 3 of them, and then the clips cost $20. So I spent like $200 on just backgrounds. I could have put that towards a new lens or some more lights or models or tools, other stuff. This isn't for everybody, and it's cool for what it is. I really like it. I like having it. It's just another tool in the arsenal for me, but definitely not for everybody. So I will say that straight away. Now, if you're in a cheaper market and you want to do something like this, if you don't like the idea of just taking pictures on a white backdrop or a black backdrop or whatever, but you still like the texture stuff that you get with an actual backdrop. This is going to be harder to demonstrate. I went to Lowe's. I think I spent under $25, and I just bought some tile. You can buy single tile, just one, and it's relatively inexpensive. This was like $5 or $6, and I can take this and I can prop it up here. I don't do this a ton. This is kind of a newer thing for me. And then you can take, these are other ones. I'm just going to lay this across this way. What did I just click? Okay. Lay that across like that. And we'll just stand our model there again. And we'll grab one more shot just so you guys can see what it looks like. Let's try and zoom in so you don't see the sides as much. And there you go. So you've got totally different textures. You still have control. Now the downside to these is that they're big and they're heavy. They're a little bit harder to store. And like if you've got like one or two that you really like and they're buried under the ones that you don't really like as much, it can be a problem. But for the price, you can't beat it. Tiles are great. Don't be afraid to go looking at the hardware store for things that can help your modeling photography. It's, you know, I kind of have become part of this culture that look around everywhere for things that you can use. Now, with all that said, still to this day, my favorite way to take pictures is just on a piece of paper. So we're going to set up a high key. This is a all white backdrop. I'm just going to pin this to my wall. Boom. And you're saying, Justin, well, what about that overlap on the ground? You're like, you don't have very much room to work. You take a second one and you overlay it just a little bit. And you overlay it this way, not the other way, because your lights are shooting this way. Any shadow is going to be wiped out, hopefully. I'm dropping everything on the floor, but it's okay. So we'll go ahead and slap our model back down, and we're going to take another picture. And this is for those people who like that really, really high contrast, that strong white backdrop with just the model in the void. So let me get this properly exposed. And there you've got it. Like, no work at all. We've got a little bit of shadow, so if we pull this away a little bit, you know, you can kind of help mitigate those shadows just a little bit. Another thing you can do is kind of point it more towards the model. Oh, almost lost the light. Let's try that again. There we go. I think that looks a little bit better. So there's some of the setups I use. Now, other things that you can do, obviously, you can buy the photo tents. Those are really nice for what they are. I don't like them as much just because I like having a big open area that I can photograph in. I like being totally in control. If you don't mind having a confined work area, it's great. It automatically filters down the lights for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And filtering lights is pretty easy. If you have desk lamps like these, you just tie a coffee filter around it or a piece of tracing paper. Excuse me. I'm using LED bulbs, so they don't get hot, which means that I can do stuff like that. If you're using regular bulbs, they tend to put off more heat than light. So proceed with caution there. Maybe take 4 or 5 pictures at a time, let them cool off for a half hour, do some more. But, options. There's loads of options out there. There's tons of stuff you can do. Man. So we're gonna make a little bit of a sweep here. If I can get these paints out from behind here. There we go. So what do you guys want to do? Should we keep taking pictures? You guys have any like pose suggestions for me that I can do on these models? And anything you want to see? Are there any questions? I still taught this really fast. I don't know what I'm doing. I wish that I was skilled in that department. Unfortunately. So let's jump into framing. This is my favorite part of taking pictures. I really like playing with light, but there's something about framing a picture to kind of set a scene. So what I mean by this is, like, I could take a picture of this pose just like this. That's a little bit much. Let me tone my f-stop there. There we go. So I can take a picture like that, and that looks fine. That actually looks really cool. But if I give it just a little bit of tip, and I bring it down some, and I shoot up on it, it creates a little bit more of a visual flair. It doesn't look so superficial. If you're only using natural light, probably closer to afternoon. Now, as far as like the colors go, that's going to be up to you. In the morning, you're going to have like a softer light, and in the afternoon, usually you have more of an orange or a purple light, and things look a little bit different. So that's going to be kind of up to taste. But if you are going to photograph outside, I find that like around lunchtime is usually like good middle ground. What's wrong?
Tell them what you saw.
What'd you see?
Is it a caterpillar?
You saw a caterpillar.
She's scared he's gonna get run over.
He's not going to get run over. He's gonna go hang out on some flowers.
He had some spiders. He had some black stuff on some, you know.
Yeah.
Need to see you again? Okay. That's all we wanted to come do.
Thank you. It's hot in here. Can you turn the air on?
I'm freezing!
That's fine. I'll be alright.
My feet are cold.
I'll be alright. It's fine.
It's 69 in here. It's good enough.
Can you bring me a water? Sorry about that. So, when I photograph people, when people think about it, when people take selfies, all right? When you hold your phone to take a selfie, you're not holding the phone down here. You're not holding the phone at eye level. You're usually holding it up. And the reason that you hold your phone up when you take a selfie, first of all, is because you're taking a picture of your face. But the reason that it looks the way it does is because you're putting the first thing that your camera sees is your head. It's going to make your head project before the rest of your body. It makes everything else look smaller. It projects your face, and it makes that the key point of the photo. So if you shoot down on one of your models, it's going to make it look smaller. Obviously, the top of it's going to look larger, but like the feet and stuff are going to look smaller. And what this kind of creates the illusion of, or well, in this case, not the illusion, is that what you're taking a picture of is incredibly small. But if you get down low and you take a picture from underneath, suddenly it looks a lot larger. And that's because from the viewer's perspective, they are beneath this object, looking up at it. Dave, that is going to be dependent on what kind of lens and stuff you're using. Right now I'm using just the stock kit lens, so I like to be a little bit farther back and just zoom in. Because I'm doing a physical zoom, I'm not losing any image quality. If you're using like a cell phone, that's a digital zoom. That actually just kind of like zooms in on the picture that you've already taken. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Z. So, one of the things I like to do with my pictures, and I do it all the time, is I like to take pictures from underneath the model because it creates that illusion, like I said, that this is a real thing. Anytime I take a picture of a model, I want to sell the illusion that it's real. Even if I'm not shooting on like an in-scale backdrop, or if I take it outside and you can see a lot of trees and stuff in the background, it looks small. I at least try to take one or two pictures where I'm really low and you can see all the details, and then I'll zoom in, and you know, it just works. It looks really cool. I think it helps with that. No, if you can, like, if I can take a picture here, let me see if I can. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to get really as close as I can get and still focus. So you can see there's the picture. Now let's see if I can get something close and farther away. It looks roughly the same. It all depends on your lens. If you have like a macro lens, you can get way, way, way closer. And then the same thing with, like, if you were, I don't know why you would use one, but if you have a telephoto lens, you can get way, way, way farther back. It just depends on your space, how you're shooting. If you're outside, obviously you have a little bit more leeway with stuff like that. But take your framing into consideration. The typical setup for me is I will take my model, I will put it in like what I consider to be a strong stance. So, hands down, feet spread, shoulders up, arms down, elbows bent slightly in and slight bend to the elbows, chin pointed down slightly, and I will take a picture of it. Just like that. Then I'll turn it 45 degrees. And I'll do it again. And then I'll turn it 45 degrees. And guess what? Until I get it from every angle. This is what I call my showcase photos. These are the boring shots for me. These are just, this is what I've done, this is my work, like an overall presentation of your model kit. So I get the 360. One more, straight on. This is usually the least flattering one. So from here, what I'll do is I'll just kind of fix the pose. I'll adjust things. I'll make it look the way I want it to. I'll kind of tip the head up a little bit. Straighten the arms out just a tiny bit. I'll put it back at that 45. And this is where I'm going to start zooming in on details. So I want to show you this chipping here on the leg. Boom. Now you can see the chipping on the leg. You also see all that rust and stuff on the feet. You see a little bit of the knee. You want to see that visor. I spent so much time weathering. Show off your details. Show off what you're proud of. You spent a long time working on this model. After you've taken the overall shots, get in. And this is kind of a double-edged sword, because if there's mistakes, this is where you're really going to see them. So I don't usually make a habit of pointing out my mistakes. But underneath the gun barrels, I got a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of yellow oil paint. And while I was dot filtering, even though I went back and tried to remove it and then went over it with gray and other browns and stuff like that to kind of cover it up, it still comes through just a little bit. Just a little. And it's a very small mistake, but when you get in close like this, those mistakes blow up. Let's see, what other details do I like on this? I really like the shadowing on the skirt. So let's zoom in on that. Let's show that off. And this is one of those parts where you can just kind of like, you can move the model around. You can change the pose if you want to, but I'm just trying to focus in on details. So the pose isn't something that's important to me right now. Again, shadowing on this leg. They've got a lot of built up grime and stuff around that panel. We've got a lot of paint distress on the backs of the legs. You can see it now. It's all there. So once you're content with these shots, this is when I'll start posing and doing some of the crazier stuff. So I'm going to pull him a little bit closer to the edge here. I really like the way that the model looks with his hand like on the barrel. Maybe I could kneel him. Let's see. I don't know if it's just me, but I can never get it like a really cool looking kneeling pose. It's really hard to do. And then I'll zoom out just a little, make sure I get everything in frame. And there we've got it. I think I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more. I just want to show off a little bit more of the model. So in post, I'll be able to go back and look at these and see which one I like better, and I'll choose from there. So let's switch gears. Let's jump into the woundwort. Now the woundwort is a lighter colored model. It's not dirty, so I went a little bit closer to a showroom finish, but I did do shading. Now some people consider shading to be weathering. I do not. It can help accent your weathering, but I don't consider it to be in of itself weathering. So for this, I'm going to mix up just a little bit. I've got this piece of glass. This came off of my old desk. There's a lot of scratches on here for some reason. It's got two sides. This side is a little bit more diffused looking, and this is more like reflective. So we're just going to use the reflective side. We're going to keep that right here underneath our backdrop. I'm going to take the woundwort, and we're going to go ahead and knock our 360 out. So, stand it. And let's get in there and have a look. Now this is going to have a little bit different of a look because we've changed the bottom. Now we still got a little bit of a sweep, but now we're going to have a reflection. So I'm going to pull back a little bit farther than I normally would, just so I can get a little bit of that in my pictures. I want that to show. just like that, we've got a really clean backdrop with a solid horizon line. I can use that to help make sure the photo is level. I like to handhold. I probably should have talked about this way earlier. I like to handhold. If you're having trouble with your exposure and you have to slow the shutter speed down, consider investing in a tripod, even a cheap one. It'll make your life a lot easier. So if you have to shoot at like 1/40, like I could probably, well, I definitely overexposed it, but you get the idea. If I needed to do it, I can, but it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world. I don't like to do it, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I like to handhold, so I try to keep my shutter speed somewhere around 1/100. It's just really easy to manage. You very rarely get shutter or like blur from your hand shaking. It's like a nice sweet spot. When you dip down to like 160, that's when you start hitting the danger zone. Like you got to be real careful. You might have to take a couple shots a couple times. But I don't like to use a tripod. I don't use them at work, so I'm very comfortable holding the camera in my hands and keeping things level that way. If you are not, by all means, don't be afraid to use a tripod. There's no shame in it. So we're going to turn him. We're going to go and get another shot. And I think we're a little overexposed. Yeah. There we go. Let's try it again. There we go. I almost nailed it. Like it was almost the exact same picture. We're going to turn it to the back. We're going to show the back off. All those nice decals by Simpro. Boom. Now you can see over here on this side, you can see a little bit of the sweep of the paper in the back. I'm going to crop this in, especially on like Instagram. Instagram is all square, so I'll just center up, or even if I wanted to, I could go with like a thirds. I could just kind of put it on that thirds line and square it up, and you won't even see that sweep line. But that's another thing if you're going to use glass to take into consideration. So there's the back shot. And we're going to swing it back around. Now once you've done half of it, you can realistically stop. That's up to you. It depends on if there's like asymmetry going on in the build or anything crazy like that. Some people, like myself, I just like to make sure I get the whole thing. And then one more. Let's get that ugly one. So there you go. So there's our 360. Now there's not really any impressive or insane detailing that I did on this. I am going to get in. I'm going to show off like the face. I really like the head. I'm going to show off some of the decal work. And I think, that's pretty much going to be a big extent of it. The hand, I painted all the fingers, so we're going to do that. Some of the small detailing on like the little piping detail that all the AOZ kits have. I just want to show off that I did it. So, again, we're going to zoom in. We're going to come down just a little bit. Next, we're going to get that detail. Let's give him a little turn. Let's turn him. We'll turn him this way. That's fine. And we're going to bring his little tail up just a little bit. Again, we're going to just get in there. We're going to spin him to the other side. We're going to try and get that hand nice and in focus. And this is really where you can see what I was talking about with the f-stop. So I'm at f9, and you can see that the back here, the bulb, is a little bit out of focus. The higher I bring that f-stop, the less that's going to happen. It's going to make that little sliver that's in focus widen up, so I can see more and more of what I'm doing. One of my other lenses is not a zoom lens, but it can go down to 1, and I can really get in there. Some people like that effect. If you don't like it, adjust your f-stop. When you're balancing your settings, you need to determine which settings are the most important for you. Because I'm a little bit of a quality snob, my ISO is always as low as I can get it. I mean, right now it's not, but any other time, ISO is down to like 200. And then I will use my f-stop to adjust my exposure. So like right now I would be shooting this at f5.6, but that's a little dark for the stream. I don't know if it's showing up dark on your end, but for me it's a little bit dark. So just for the sake of the stream, I can bump that to 400. That looks a lot better. Yeah. So don't be afraid to mess with your settings. You can take a million pictures of your models. Pick out the ones you like. There's no reason that you should only be taking like 10 pictures and calling it a day. Every time I take pictures, I at least take like 100, usually about 100, but depending on how big the model is and how much posing I do, even with just a 360 and some detail shots, I try to do at least like 30. So now we're gonna jump into putting this guy on the action base. This is not my favorite action base. I ordered a new one not that long ago, and I don't know where I put it. So this is what we got. I'll fold his little kickstands up. Let's give him a little bit of a lean. And let's get him moving just a little bit. Bring that leg up. And then we'll stick him on the action base and make our adjustments. So I'm going to fold this down just a little. Bring that chin up. And that'll work. So scoot back just a little bit so I can get comfortable. Alright, so I want to talk about something that I do at work a lot with portraits. We call it tilt. So the rule is whatever your main source of light is, this is all flat lit, so you get 24 shots to get yeah. See, I'm kind of new to photography. I've only actually really understood photography for the past like 2 years or so. I've been working in photography for about 4, but I've really fallen in love with it. So I haven't quite experimented with film, but I think that I would like to at some point, because it's a whole different world. I forgot what I was saying. So yeah, we're just gonna lean him out. We're just gonna create a little bit of expressive stuff in the picture. Oh, we're talking about tilt. So one of the things that you see a lot of in portraits, just to create interest. If I'm taking a picture of a person, in your setup you have what is called a main light. So your primary source of light is where your subject is going to be looking, even if it's slight. So we have the model. It's kind of pointing out. We've created that picture. That's actually a really cool shot. I really like that. But if I want to add a little bit of drama to it, just a little bit, I'm going to take it The subject is pointing this way. I'm going to tilt my camera this way. Just a little. You don't have to do a lot. Suddenly, it's a totally different picture. And that's all it took was a little bit of tilt. Now, oftentimes, I will take both ways. I do this especially at work, because it only takes a second to take that second picture. You take it like this, tilt it, take a second one. And you show it. When I go into post, I will look at both of these pictures and I will say, well, I don't think I like the tilt in this scenario, but it looks really good in this scenario. There's no harm in taking a second picture. And this is how you start racking up that photo count, is little stuff like this. Maybe I want to take a picture up high, but maybe it doesn't look as good, so I'll come down low. I'll give that tilt. And I think that looks a million times better. But that's just me. Maybe you guys like the other one better. So let's grab the gun. And I'm going to admit, straight out the gate, this is one of those, remember how we were talking about taking pictures and like showing off your mistakes? I flat coated this whole model yesterday and totally forgot to flat coat the gun. So let's pull this guy in. Let's pop his hand off. Let's just wiggle that around a little bit. I don't know why that's fighting me so much. Is that... Oh, shoot. Guess what, guys? We lost a piece on the floor. Oh, there it is. Okay, we're good. Crisis averted. It was the wrist mount of all things. So I'm going to have to redo some of these photos later on. Like I said, I forgot to flat coat the gun. But I think for this it'll be okay. I think one of the more iconic poses is you always see it with its hand on the gun. And I'm going to turn it this way. Let's raise the angle of this. Let's raise the angle of this a little bit. If I can get it undone. Maybe. There we go. This action base is junk. I wish I knew what happened to my other one. There we go. So, again, stick that in there like that. Give it a little twist. Get it lined up how we want it. That down just a hair. There's really nothing in between that. Nope. Okay. See if we can use that to our advantage. So now we're not going to have the whole gun in the shot, but boom. And then again, let's give it a little bit more tilt. Oh yeah. Now I think this mounts onto the arm some way. I also just noticed that the arm is on backwards. And this is why I struggle so hard with taking action shots. So this should clip onto here somehow. And I can fold that up. wish I could kind of adjust. Oh, yep, maybe that works. There we go. Let's pull this back just a teeny tiny bit. Put that in that next wedge. There we go. And again, now this is where I'm really going to start showing off like the f-stop thing. I like a shallow depth of field. I think it looks cool. I think it creates interest. It helps draw focus. So I'm going to focus on the head. The barrel of the gun is incredibly blurry. I can do the opposite. I can lock in on that. Boom. But it's not too often people care about just that. So throw some tilt on it. And you can tilt the same way. Let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. I think that's going to require a little bit more work to make look good. As far as like removing the action base and the platform and stuff, but I think it still looks cool. Are there any more questions or any new questions? Anything so far? Everybody keep it up. Well, I'm gonna put a full video out on this later. I wanted to kind of do a dry run, teach it live. That way, I could maybe get some questions, and if there was anything that I hadn't covered in what I talked about, I could address it. So once you've done all the fun stuff and you've got all your poses and you've got all your all your shots done, maybe start thinking about, are you on YouTube? Do you want to put like a cool thumbnail on your picture, or for the whole gallery, would you like to have like a really cool cover shot? So like when people are browsing your website or your Facebook page or whatever, what's the first image they see that draws them to that model? Something, for me, the thing that does that the most is contrast. I'm a big fan of contrast. So focus is a big thing. Contrast is a big thing. And by contrast, I mean like really, really hard light, really sharp jumps in light and dark. So I'm going to cut all these lights off except for one. I'm going to scoot this model over a bit. I'm going to switch him back to standing. And I'm going to be the first to straight up tell you, I'm not sure how this is going to look on this model, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't. We've always got the gun cannon just chilling, so, you know. And I've got plenty of other models that I can demonstrate this on. What kind of camera are you using, Sorban? Oh, come on. We're gonna ditch the gun. I don't like it. Are you in manual mode? Usually, when you're in manual mode, the settings are right at the front so that you can easily access them while you're shooting. All right, there we go. So we're gonna pop off all but one light. We're gonna get this light super close to the model, and I'm gonna put it right on one side. And of course, the neck on this thing is not the strongest. This is what is called split lighting. So the idea is all the light is coming from one side, dark is on the other side. And what we do is this is a little... Oh, there goes all my paintbrushes. That's okay, though. We find that sweet spot. And if you want, you can kind of step that down just a little more. And it creates that hard edge light that looks really cool for like a photo, like a cover photo or something. If you wanted it for your cover photo for your Facebook page or something like that. For me, Sorvan, this little wheel here, by default, will adjust my shutter speed, so you can see it change on screen. And then if I hold this little plus minus button, I don't know how well you can see that, that's going to adjust my f-stop with the wheel. I don't know what, I'm not familiar with Sony, so I don't know if Sony has that, but a lot of like DSLRs will have that kind of the wheel to help you kind of easy adjust. Maybe you do it with your up and down arrows or something. Another great artsy fartsy kind of single light photo that you can do. This is another favorite of mine. This over here is you can put the light like directly over top your model. And this is kind of that like it's in the hangar, like a spotlight photo. I feel like you see this shot a lot with like resin kits. They'll prime it up, they'll mock it together, and then this is the picture you get. Dope. Awesome. Another one, this one's a lot harder to do, but I'm going to try it. We're going to try it my way. I'm going to use my phone. I'm going to turn my light on, and I'm just going to put it underneath the model. Turn everything off. I'm going to prop this up just a little bit so it kind of points towards the model. Let me bump my ISO just a little bit. That is called monster lighting. You photograph with light coming from underneath the subject. It creates a very like eerie and like ominous look. Now obviously here with the backdrop, not super ideal. I could probably like use something to kind of like shield that a little bit from the backdrop. That looks a lot better. Huh. I actually think my f-stop is tied to the zoom as well, because if I'm zoomed all the way in, I can go to f6, but if I zoom all the way out, I can go as low as 3.5. So I don't think it's entirely dependent on the zoom, but I think it is kind of influenced by the zoom. Alright, so I've got one more handy little trick I can show you. This is, again, kind of artsy-fartsy stuff. I tried to make sure I showed you the important stuff before I showed you the fun stuff. And that was just so that you guys could have a basic understanding of how things worked and why you do the things you do. I really hope this is the right bag. So these are what are called gels. They are transparent, clear plastic sheets, and you put them over your lights and they change the color of your lights. I've got a ton of them. They were actually larger than this. They were about the size of like an A4 sheet of paper, and then I trimmed them down so that they fit inside of these LED lamps, but they're a little bit, these run a little bit warm, so they tend to warp them if you leave them in there too long. So since we're shooting an AOZ kit, let's grab purple. I'm going to tape this onto this light. So we're going to grab some masking tape. And again, this is just fun stuff. This is, you know, once you're all done and you just want to show it off and do some neat, fun stuff. I think my favorite color lit project that I photographed was my red frame. I think the photos for that came out really cool, and I had a lot of fun photographing it. My boss actually helped me with the photos, and he is a fantastic photographer. We're going to grab that. We're just going to wrap this around to just kind of secure things and make sure that this doesn't move too much. I'll bring that down. And we're just going to have this as kind of like a little bit of a key light, just so that the picture isn't super dark. It's not really necessary. I mean, I could use, actually I think I'm going to use this one. So let me turn this off. I just want a little something to kind of light this side. And I'm going to turn the warm light down and just use the cool light. And again, we're going to zoom in. I gotta fix my settings again. And then it's got a slight purple hue to it. So you can go into post again. If I throw this into Snapseed or Photoshop or anything like that, I can take the intensity slider and I can turn that up a little bit, and it will make that purple a little bit more intense. Or alternatively, I could just move the light closer to the model. And I can even split using color. So maybe I just want a purple light. Boom. Now it's both one light split and it's colored. So gels are insanely cheap. I got that entire set of gels off of Amazon, and it was like $3. It was insane. Now, the more other light you use, the less effective the gel is going to be, obviously. You can use multiple gels that are multiple colors to create different effects. There's a lot of different things you can do. The sky is kind of the limit with this kind of stuff. But the big takeaways here, guys, you don't need an expensive camera to take good pictures. You just don't. I could have done this whole thing on my phone and got, I don't want to say the same results, but similar results. It would have been easier to edit because it's all right there, it's all built in, and that would be that. But if you have the means to get a DSLR, I do recommend it. There are a lot of different kinds. Do your research, find one. You don't need to spend a ton of money on a DSLR. This was $600. It came with a lens, it came with a case, it came with a memory card, it came with 2 batteries, a whole bunch of stuff. You can buy just the body for this for like $200 right now, and I think it comes with a lens. And it's insanely cheap for an entry level professional grade camera. All the bells and whistles. Photography is not hard. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Once you figure out how the settings work, once you figure out the pictures you want to take, everything else is easy. It's super easy. There's not a lot to it. Lighting is key. If photography is something you're interested in, invest in lights. It will make your photography stand out so much more if you light your photos properly, you light your photos well. Backdrop options, again, can range from being kind of expensive to very cheap. As you can see, this is 2 pieces of paper I got for 40-some cents a piece at Walmart, and a piece of glass that I took from a desk that I threw away. And that is what we took all these pictures on today. There's more options like the tile. If you really like the texture, you can use the tile. That'll really make your work stand out differently as well. You can use a variety of different ones that are also very inexpensive. Yeah, man, thank you for coming and hanging out, man. I really, really had fun with this. But yeah, so that's photography. Does anybody have questions? I will gladly answer anything that you guys need to know. Oh, yeah. I will, once I figure out where I put it. There it is. Yeah, I'll put it up on screen for you right now. Boom. Look at that. Oh, overexposed. Sorry, hold on. There we go. And then we'll blow that up for everybody who needs a screenshot. Sorry about my handwriting. But yeah, just to iterate a little bit further on the triangle, because I didn't go super in depth, and I thank you for bringing that up. I just want to talk about it again, just for a few minutes. The key to balancing the triangle, it seems like a lot to balance 3 settings at once. The key is to figure out which one of these settings is the most important to you. For me, personally, it's quality. I want the quality of my photos to be strong. So ISO is very important to me, personally. So I set my ISO as low as I can get it. Then all I have to do is balance the shutter speed and the f-stop. Rule of thumb is for every point you bump the f-stop down, you bump the shutter speed up the same amount. That way they're balanced. If you can't get a middle ground with the other two, bump your ISO 1 point. Try again. It's really, 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 really simple. Same thing goes if shutter speed is important to you. If you're taking pictures of somebody outside running, you want a fast shutter speed, so then you balance these 2 settings, the other 2 settings instead. It's all in what you want to accomplish with your pictures. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming and hanging out. Are there any more questions? Well, if you need any help, Sorvon, you know where to reach me, man. Just I'm always available. Well, most of the time when I'm not sleeping. Is there anything else you guys would like to see me do? Ah, that's a shame. Well, it's going to be up, so hopefully you can comb through it and find some useful information. I tried to cover as much as I could as far as backdrops. The only thing I didn't touch on was posing, and that's just because it's not really a subject that I'm super strong at. I'm not the best at it. I usually just use box references and then like try and make sure that I use the accessories. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I think I'm going to end this here. There's not really much else I can teach or talk about. They really are. Now, there's a lot of I see a lot of like Japanese Twitter posters will kind of go over their what's the word I'm looking for? Like the reason that they pose, and they kind of show like all the lines and stuff like that, and you can use leading lines and stuff like that to kind of guide a pose. And there's a lot of things that go into making a good looking pose picture, like just using framing. Like you can poorly frame a great pose, and you can really nail the framing on a not so great pose, and it makes two totally different pictures. That's not a bad way to do it. Grab something that can pose really well, like the Jim Jim or like a Revive kit, and just snap it up and play with it. There's I follow a lot of pages on Facebook that like they'll just snap kits and they take really nice photos. Big shout out to my friend. There's Lightning Ace on Instagram. He doesn't post as much as he used to. There's I think it's Gabgrade does really good photos. There was another one I was just about to say and I already forgot it, and now I feel like a giant asshole. Jeez. Oh man, what's his name? I don't know. I'll remember it eventually, but look around. There's tons of inspiration out there. There's tons of people who are taking pictures. You can't really claim copyright on a picture. A lot of poses. Look at the animes that your models are coming from. Look at the box art. Look at reference online. When I actually photographed my God Gundam, I looked up like karate poses and kung fu poses and stuff, and I tried to put the model in a ton of kung fu poses. So that was like, a lot of those pictures look kind of weird, but it was because I was using real life reference instead of using scale model reference or anime reference. I wanted it to look like it was doing actual karate. Oh, alright guys, well I'm going to get off here. I'm going to go play Call of Duty with my wife. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. It means the world to me. Again, I hope you guys learned something, and if you guys have any questions at all, if there's anything that I didn't touch or that you think I could have gone farther into detail on, say the word, and I will happily, you know, try and fill in the blanks. And then that way, when I make the actual video covering this subject, I make sure that I don't skip anything. So please reach out to me, leave me comments, send me messages, whatever you guys need, and I'll do my best to cater to your needs. So thank you guys for hanging out, and I will see you guys on Friday's stream with the Helios crew. Hopefully you guys come hang out, and I'll see you guys later.